All right, hi everybody. We have another Patreon selection.
Yeah, Tyler Prawl, one of our regular patrons. We know he's a fan
Yeah.
of racing, and
Yeah.
here we have another racing film.
Let's talk about it. We're talking about the Lionheart.
And welcome back to the show, everybody. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe from GoatheFilmReviews.com.
I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast. Thanks for finding us. Thanks for watching. And for our loyal fans, thank you for continuing to support the show. Now, another way you can support the show that our Patreon, of course, because this is a Patreon selection. Join the Patreon, you get some great deals, great content, and of course, an opportunity to tell us what movies we will review in future episodes, just like this one. And of course, a shout out to you as well. And Kyle is a member of the Minnesota Film Critics Alliance. Guess what? So am I. Check out that film website for film critics reviews as well as ours. And today we're talking about a documentary, which we hardly ever do on this show.
Yeah, it's nice to break it up.
Yeah, it's but another race car documentary. So let's go.
Yeah. So 10 years after the death of two-time Indy 500 winner Dan Weldon, his two sons continue in his footsteps on the racing scene.
Okay, I don't think we're spoiling everybody, but if you get a documentary about a race car driver, chances are he's still not around.
Yeah, it's one of those things watching, what was it, Schumacher as well, when we covered that film, was the more that they dance around not showing you the guy, and again, I'm not a racing guy, so I don't know these people as well, but the more time you spend without them, the more time you realize where it's going. So
it's the same thing about an artist. Oh, we wanted a documentary about Kafka. It's like, oh yeah, he's dead too. Right. Right. So HBO Documentaries is producing, they actually do pretty well documentaries. And of course, it's Dan Welding, who got great success in the early 2000s. He's kind of an upstart, but also this kind of present a case of following his past, but also going forward of what his family does with him not there.
Yeah, it's an interesting dichotomy, actually, where you spend some of the time in the past with him and then we jump forward in time. It's an interesting structure where we're following his kids in their footstep and how so much of the children's path going forward and learning racing mirrors his own rise and fall. So
right. Overall, with the structure of the documentary, I think it's kind of, because I really have no idea about this person. I mean, I maybe watch as a glance. I don't follow racing culture. So it's interesting to know about this person. I do like it that he references as his superhero, his idol is Richard the Lionheart, because when you mentioned we're going to see Lionheart, it's like, is it Richard the Lionheart? The only person I know. And it's kind of interesting that he used that person as an inspiration. He did like Richard the Lionheart, who has a little bit of OCD as well as leading the Third Crusades. I like the overall structure of this, but it feels, when I watch it, the people I don't really enjoy the people. It's kind of, you could tell like race car people have one gear, like to win. Yeah, that's all they care about. I understand that, but they're pushing these kids, and I really don't know if I support them pushing their kids into this where they're just let them be kids almost. Because I was part of the culture of sports as a kid. I was on hockey all the time.
yeah.
And eventually you get to the point where you get either really worn out about it, or you don't think about anything else.
Yeah. And I think I felt that vibe from the film as well. I almost feel like this story would be better suited telling in a fictional narrative feature than a documentary, because you can see the pain is still going on in Susie's, the widow's life. And what she's going through, and I don't feel like the documentary is able to dive in without actually like causing harm. You know what I mean? Like, it's almost like they keep a bit of a distance with her, diving into that difficulty of having her children do this, and they don't get any further than that for good reason. But I feel like that's where a narrative feature could actually dive into it more, because I understand the need to, like, when you're a driver, you're a racer. It's what you do.
Yes,
it's all you can be, and I feel like the film, because it's working with younger people, smartly pulls back, but at the damage to the story.
It's almost like, it's almost like they understand this is a possibility of not surviving a race.
Yeah.
It's a possibility. But nobody ever discusses it. But it's almost like everybody involved, entire life slammed on the brakes and haven't really moved forward at all.
Yeah.
They're still in that grieving process. In the beginning of the movie, they read letters of condolences.
Yeah, that was a strange opening to me, I felt, just because, you can tell that the kids didn't know their dad as well, so they're affected, but it's kind of like they have that distance from him because they were so much younger when he passed.
Yeah.
And the mother is still in horribly, like, grief-stricken mode. that it was hard to watch at times. And that's why I think going to a narrative distinction of like using the source material to tell a narrative feature would have been the smarter choice.
Okay, and I do like the interviews from other racers, his competitors who understand him. I do like that some of his counterparts, his team members.
Yeah.
And you get a
Dario
person
Franchetti was good. Yeah.
You get a person that like Dan Whelan, who obviously get a sense that he very much was cocky, but he very much could back it up. He feels almost like a Marvel superhero, almost like Iron Man, where you're repulsed by him, but man, is he really good. But also you get a sense of his superhero is also his flaw. He's very much an OCD.
Yeah.
Undiagnosed OCD. Where that explains that, where he excels in kind of simple racing ovals, but if you kind of jag it up and you mess up the racetrack, it doesn't excel for him, where a lot of other people work at it. So you can see his strengths and weaknesses, and his strength is overbearingly better than anybody else.
Yeah. And I think what's hard to watch about it is a person like Dan. I think everybody knows a person like Dan Weldon. Somebody who's so driven that they don't see the dangers, and they don't. It's almost like they don't care about the dangers because they've never been faced with it on the level that he is. And I think having that sequence where they're talking about setting up this race at the Las Vegas Speedway, and they've never done it here before because of the way in which the track is constructed is way more dangerous for this type of racing, and yet they're still going to do it. And Dan's going to do it, and he's going to be in trouble. And it's kind of like, it is like watching that, the thing of watching a car crash. You know it's coming.
Yeah. And right. And it is, well, like in the movie Rush, how come there's not a lot of safety features in your race car? And it's like, well, we could, but what's the fun of that?
Yeah.
Right? We add more safety features to the race car. So, right, you go into a linear path, but I do like the investigation of what happened. Like there's a freeze frame. Nobody's really moved on.
Yeah.
After this event in 2011, which is 13 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's devastating to everybody, but also I don't think even race car has even moved on afterwards.
Yeah.
So it
as
feels
a
like
sport, it seems like the people behind the curtain don't really make positive change when these kinds of horrific accidents happen.
Right. Yeah. So it's a very interesting. I love we like movies. We invest in other cultures that we're not familiar with. But I'm just not familiar with race car driving as much as our patron Tyler is. But I do like that we get a sense of this Dan, who everybody gets. If you were a competitor, you upset him. If he was a teammate, you enjoyed him.
Yeah. I like that idea of they dance around basically saying like, he could be a bit of an ass, but that's what we loved about him. I think, and I think that's kind of that level of cockiness that he has, was he was damn good at the job. And so I think he had that level of respect. He earned it. And I think that's kind of what made all these people around him embrace him for that reason. So, I thought the character study on Dan was really fantastic. I just struggled with the Oliver and Sebastian portion of it. I think there's definitely a spot to notate it, but I think it very much feels to me like Susie the widow is still like heavily in grief, and I think it was really hard to watch the camera try to get further in, knowing that I feel like that was causing damage. So, strong documentary though. I think HBO is like the second best sports documentary group that's out there after ESPN and 30 on 30.
Yeah, and competitive. So, thanks for picking it out. Our Patreon selection.
Yeah, it's a movie that we watch new movies. This is a new movie, but at the same time, documentaries about this subject were not like the most at the forefront for us. So we appreciate our patron Tyler Paul for picking this for us, because we probably wouldn't have watched it without him. And I was positive on the film overall. So
right, I've only seen like 3 documentaries already this year that came out of 2024. So thank you once again.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. And if you want to be a patron, check out that link. Join us. Pick some stuff to watch. We'll see you next time.